There's a truth we learn slowly and sometimes painfully, that harm has a way of circling back to its source. Not always on our timeline, not always in the way we imagine. But the universe has a remarkable talent for balancing what people try to unbalance. And when we say evil never goes unpunished, we aren't talking about revenge. We're talking about reality. Harm always circles back to its source because the world has a way of balancing what people try to break. When someone intentionally hurts another, they rarely understand the weight of what they've created. They think the damage ends with the person they wounded, as if pain is a one-way transaction. But harm is not a line, it's a loop. It travels outward, then quietly, inevitably returns home. The truth is that cruelty doesn't just affect the person receiving it, it reshapes the identity of the one who delivers it. You cannot keep wounding others without eventually becoming defined by the very darkness you use. When someone lies, manipulates, belittles, or betrays, they plant seeds that grow into distrust, isolation, broken relationships, and inner turmoil. In the moment, it may look like they're getting away with it. They may walk away confident, proud, or even amused by the pain they caused. But the consequences begin immediately, even if invisible. Their relationships start to shift because people sense more than we give them credit for. Their reputation slowly corrodes as patterns reveal themselves. Their ability to form real connection weakens because deception requires constant performance. They lose something far more valuable than victory. They lose the chance to live with integrity. Harm also comes back internally. When someone acts from cruelty, insecurity, or ego, they create a version of themselves that becomes harder to live with. They carry secrets, guilt, and fear of being exposed. They build walls they can't climb over. They develop habits of defensiveness, blame, and denial. And these habits trap them. Life becomes smaller, relationships become shallow, and peace becomes unreachable. They might look fine from the outside, but inside, their soul is paying a price they can't escape. Even when consequences aren't immediate, life is patient. Patterns catch up. The truth emerges. People leave. Opportunities disappear. The world has a subtle but reliable way of reflecting back what we put into it. Those who harm eventually face the same emptiness they tried to give others. The difference is that you, the one who was hurt, have the ability to heal. But the person who caused harm must live with the truth of what they've done. This is why you don't need to track someone's downfall or wish for revenge. The universe doesn't forget. Actions have a lifespan, and they always conclude where they began. Your energy is better spent on your own growth, your own peace, your own rebuilding. Let life handle the balance. It's better at justice than any of us. Remember that what people do to you says everything about them and nothing about your worth. Harm circles back not because punishment is dramatic, but because people cannot outrun themselves. The damage they tried to give becomes the reality they must live in. And you rise, you heal, and you step into a life untouched by their choices. Silence is not approval, and delay is not escape. It's simply the quiet space where truth gathers its strength. When someone causes harm and nothing happens right away, it's easy to assume they've slipped through the cracks, that life has overlooked their actions, or that they've somehow earned immunity from consequences. But silence is deceptive. It can look like freedom to the one who did wrong and like injustice to the one who was hurt. In reality, silence is the pause before accountability, not its absence. Life doesn't always respond to wrongdoing with immediate thunder or instant backlash. Sometimes consequences unfold slowly, subtly, almost invisibly. Sometimes they happen internally long before anything external becomes obvious. The delay is not a loophole, it's the process. People often mistake this waiting period as the world approving their behavior or deciding not to intervene. But silence is not a reward. It is the space in which character reveals itself. Those who harmed others continue to live with themselves, and that alone has weight. Delay is often the moment where patterns form. The world may not punish a cruel action instantly, but over time, repeated behavior creates a reputation. It shapes how people see them, trust them, and interact with them. It affects their relationships, their opportunities, their peace of mind. One act of harm might not expose someone, but a pattern will. And patterns always surface. They always reveal the truth of who someone really is. What looks like an escape is simply a countdown. When truth finally catches up, it doesn't knock softly. It arrives with clarity, consequences, and the undeniable evidence of accumulated choices. For the person who has been hurt, silence can feel like abandonment, as if the universe is ignoring their pain. But silence is often protection, not punishment. It gives the space needed for healing, for clarity, for strength. It gives distance from the person who harmed you so their consequences do not become your burden. You're not being asked to wait for justice, you're being asked to release the need to watch it happen. Justice does not need an audience to be real. Delay is also where people reveal their true selves. Those who have done wrong often interpret silence as permission, and they continue with the same behavior. But with every repetition, they tighten the net around themselves. Their lies multiply. Their stories contradict. Their relationships deteriorate. Their peace fades. They may look unbothered, but internally the cost is rising. Delay magnifies the outcome, making the eventual consequences deeper and more defining. Silence is not approval. It's simply the world giving someone the chance to do better, and if they refuse, the consequences grow stronger. Delay is not escape. It's the space where truth organizes, where patterns become visible, and where life patiently prepares the lesson someone refused to learn. You may not see the unfolding, but nothing harmful goes unnoticed. Nothing stays invisible forever. And no one outruns what they've done. Life is far too thorough for that. No one can hurt others without hurting themselves first, because every act of cruelty, deception, or disrespect begins in a place of inner turmoil. People who lash out aren't operating from strength, they're operating from wounds they haven't faced. When someone harms another person, they're not just projecting pain outward, they're deepening the pain within. The damage they inflict becomes part of their identity, something they carry even when no one else can see it. And whether they admit it or not, their behavior is a reflection of a fractured inner world struggling to hold itself together. When someone chooses to belittle, manipulate, betray, or undermine others, they create an internal environment that is unstable. They must justify their actions to themselves, which requires denial, defensiveness, and self-deception. These mental habits slowly chip away at their peace. They begin to distrust others because they know how untrustworthy they themselves can be. They become suspicious, anxious, or controlling because they assume others will treat them the way they treat people. Their worldview narrows. Their relationships weaken. The emotional cost starts long before any external consequence appears. Harming others also limits their capacity for connection. Real connection requires vulnerability, honesty, and empathy, traits that cruelty actively destroys. Someone who constantly chooses harm cannot truly open up, because openness would expose what they're trying to hide. They can't love deeply, because deep love requires accountability. They can't maintain healthy relationships, because healthy relationships cannot survive manipulation or ego-driven behavior. Even if they surround themselves with people, they often feel lonely, misunderstood, or disconnected, not realizing that they are the architects of that loneliness. Internally, they carry the weight of guilt, even if buried. Human beings are not wired to cause pain without feeling it on some level. The mind keeps score. The heart keeps record. The body holds tension. The conscience whispers until it becomes a roar. They may numb themselves with distractions, ego, control, or righteousness, but the truth remains: harming others is a self-inflicted wound dressed up as power. What looks like dominance is really self-destruction in slow motion. Even the act of pretending not to care drains them. It takes energy to maintain the facade of superiority or indifference. It takes mental effort to keep stories straight. It takes emotional labor to ignore the impact of their actions. And slowly, that weight becomes exhausting. Their peace is compromised. Their sense of safety erodes. Their identity becomes entangled with the harm they've caused. On the surface, someone who hurts others might look bold, confident, or unbothered. But beneath that surface is tension, fear, insecurity, and emotional instability. No one harms another person from a place of wholeness. No one destroys others without destroying something within themselves. And eventually, whether through loneliness, regret, confrontation, or the natural unraveling of their own patterns, they face the reality they created. So when someone hurts you, remember this: they are already dealing with consequences you'll never see. Their behavior is their burden. Their choices are their punishment. And while you're healing, they're living with the damage they've done, damage that began inside them long before it ever touched you. Evil punishes itself through isolation and inner decay because actions rooted in cruelty cannot coexist with a life rooted in peace, connection, or emotional stability. When someone consistently chooses harm, through manipulation, lies, disrespect, or intentional cruelty, they slowly remove themselves from the very things that make life meaningful. They might believe they're winning, staying in control, or protecting their ego, but in reality, they're building a life with no foundation. Isolation doesn't happen all at once. It begins quietly in the small fractures within their relationships and their own conscience. Over time, those fractures widen until they're standing alone, surrounded not by people who care, but by the consequences of their own behavior. People who choose harm over healing push others away, even the people who once cared deeply for them. Trust erodes. Respect evaporates. Relationships become fragile. Those who once offered understanding begin to set boundaries. Those who once forgave begin to detach. Those who once believed the best begin to see the truth. And as connections crumble, a person who harms others often blames the world, not realizing they are the common denominator in every broken relationship. Their isolation isn't accidental, it's a direct result of the environment they create. But the most devastating punishment is not external, it's internal. Inner decay happens slowly, beginning the moment someone justifies hurting another person. To maintain harmful behavior, they must silence empathy and amplify ego. They must ignore guilt, deny responsibility, and rewrite the narrative to make themselves the victim or the hero. All of this corrodes the internal structure of who they are. The heart is not built to handle continual disregard for others without consequence. Emotional decay starts with denial, grows through defensiveness, and deepens into a hardened state where joy, vulnerability, and genuine connection cannot reach. This decay is subtle at first. They may feel restless, irritated, easily triggered, or constantly suspicious. They may struggle with sleep, trust, or peace of mind. They may find it difficult to maintain authentic relationships because authenticity requires accountability. And accountability is the one thing they run from. Eventually, they become emotionally unrecognizable to even themselves. The person they pretend to be and the person they truly are drift farther apart, creating a painful inner conflict they cannot escape. Isolation becomes the natural result of this inner erosion. When someone's behaviors don't align with honesty, compassion, or responsibility, people distance themselves, not out of cruelty, but out of self-preservation. And in that distancing, the person who chose harm is left with the echo of their own decisions. The world becomes a place where they feel misunderstood, unloved, or attacked, but in truth, it is their own actions returning to them. Evil punishes itself because it destroys the very qualities that sustain a meaningful life: trust, connection, peace, and self-respect. No one gets away with harming others, not because the world seeks revenge, but because cruelty is a cage that traps the one who uses it. And while they live in the shadows of their own choices, you are free to step back into the light, reclaiming your peace and building a life that their darkness can never reach. Your healing does not depend on their punishment because your freedom was never meant to be tied to their consequences. When someone has hurt you deeply, through betrayal, disrespect, cruelty, or abandonment, it's natural to want to see justice unfold. You want the world to acknowledge the pain they caused. You want life to show them what they did, to make them feel what you felt, to balance the scales in a way that restores your sense of fairness. But healing is not a courtroom, and your heart is not a place where their punishment determines your peace. Waiting for someone else to suffer only keeps you tied to the wound they left behind. Healing begins the moment you choose to stop letting their choices dictate your emotional world. If your sense of closure requires watching them fall, apologize, or face consequences, then your power is still in their hands. And you deserve better than that. Your healing is yours. It's an inner journey, one that doesn't depend on what happens to them. It depends on what you decide to reclaim within yourself. Their punishment, or lack of it, cannot repair your heart, rebuild your trust, or restore your sense of self-worth. Only you can do that. Often, the person who caused the harm doesn't understand the depth of the pain they created. Some people don't feel remorse. Some don't take responsibility. Some move on as if nothing happened. And that can feel infuriating. It can feel like they're getting away with it. But what they do or don't experience is not the key to your healing. Closure is not something they give you. It's something you grow into. It's the quiet moment when you realize your life doesn't revolve around what they did anymore. If you wait for them to face consequences before you allow yourself to heal, you lock yourself into a waiting room with no clocks. Some people never apologize. Some never change. Some never see the harm they caused. But that does not mean you must remain stuck. Your emotional recovery is not a reward that depends on someone else's downfall. It's a gift you give yourself. Healing asks different questions than punishment does. Instead of, when will they suffer? Healing asks, what do I need to feel whole again? Instead of when will they realize what they did? Healing asks, what can I release so I no longer carry this weight? Instead of when will life teach them a lesson? Healing asks, how can I reclaim my power, my voice, and my peace? Let life handle their consequences. It always does in its own quiet, precise way. But don't tether your peace to a process you can't control. The moment you detach your healing from their path, you step into a new chapter, one where your progress is not measured by their regret but by your resilience. You rise not because they fell, but because you chose to stop falling with them. That is where true freedom lies. Focus on growth, life handles the justice, because your energy is too valuable to be spent monitoring someone else's consequences. When you've been hurt, betrayed, or disrespected, it's easy to become fixated on fairness. You want to see the scales balance. You want to witness the moment life finally confronts the person who wronged you. But justice is not your responsibility, and it was never meant to be. The more you devote your mind to someone else's path, the farther you drift from your own. Growth requires attention, intention, and emotional space, all of which become blocked when you're waiting for someone else to face their reckoning. Life has a way of sorting people out, not loudly, not instantly, but with precision. Patterns reveal themselves. Character exposes itself. People eventually trip over their own behavior. What they put into the world returns to them, often in unexpected ways. You don't have to orchestrate their downfall or keep track of their choices. You don't even need to hope for justice. Life is efficient. It handles what you can't see, what you can't control, and what you don't need to carry. Your job is entirely different. Your job is to grow, to rise, to rebuild, to transform. Your healing, your purpose, your future, those deserve every ounce of your focus. When you turn inward and ask, what can I learn from this? How can I become stronger, clearer, wiser? You shift from victimhood to empowerment. You're no longer waiting for the world to correct someone else. You're actively creating a better version of yourself. That shift is where real freedom begins. Growth means putting your energy into things that multiply your life, not drain it. It means choosing to work on your identity instead of their consequences. It means tending to your mental and emotional health, building boundaries, strengthening your self-worth, and stepping into new opportunities. When you focus on growth, your life begins to expand in ways that make their actions irrelevant. The pain becomes a teacher. The betrayal becomes clarity. The disappointment becomes motivation. You rise above what was meant to break you, not because justice was served, but because you refused to stay small. And here's the truth many people overlook. When you grow, you naturally outgrow the people who hurt you. You move into spaces they cannot follow. You develop the emotional maturity they lack. You attract relationships that reflect your new level, not your old wounds. Your growth becomes a form of justice in itself. Nothing exposes someone's character more than how they react to the strength of the person they tried to harm. Meanwhile, life handles the rest. It brings lessons to those who avoided them. It reveals truths to those who tried to hide them. It creates consequences for those who believed they were above them. You don't need to witness it for it to be real. Your growth is your liberation. Your peace is your victory. Your progress is your proof that you didn't just survive, you transformed. And that transformation is far greater than any punishment life could deliver on your behalf.